Hey guys.
Hello.
Welcome to another installment of the behind the scenes commentary brought to you by me, Beau.
And me, Brandy.
You guys seem to like this a lot the first time we did it from Guatemala to Florida, so we decided to do it for the Okeechobee Waterway.
This is a 5-part series, and if you haven't caught the full videos, be sure to check out the links in the description below. We're going to drop each of those videos for you if you want to watch them without us speaking over the top of them. The purpose behind these commentaries is to give you guys more of an insider look, kind of what we're thinking about in these certain situations. Because even though we're filming them, it doesn't quite give you everything. What is exactly going through our heads at the moment?
Less than a minute to get this guy.
First off, we came to Florida originally to go to my cousin's wedding, and we actually sailed all the way from Guatemala. So we were here for about, 3-4 weeks?
Yeah, we were in Sarasota for that long.
And we both got to see our family and catch up, and it was great seeing them because we hadn't seen them in like 5 years. So it was really nice seeing everybody, and we had a great time.
All that slime.
We started to notice one little issue with our mast.
Yes. So from our sail from Guatemala all the way to Florida, the mast did fine. Like, we were in pretty strong conditions, but it was actually caving in on itself. It was sinking backwards. We had done a bunch of work to the compression post in the USVIs, a year and a half ago? So that was really concerning to us, and we didn't want to put that much stress on the mast. So we actually decided to go through the Okeechobee Waterway because we figured it was going to be the calmest,
Less
easiest.
stress on the mast.
That plus there's a marina called Indian Town, which is in the waterway there. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be the best place to get the mast stepped so we could investigate.
The one thing that we didn't show while we were in Sarasota was there is a huge red tide that happened while we were there. And it smelled so bad. And
yeah.
Unfortunately, during the wedding ceremony, there were fish all over the beach.
It was really
Our cousin
bad.
did such a great job being jolly about it. And she didn't let it bother her too much. But the smell was making us cough on our way from the dinghy dock to the boat. It was really strong.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Actually, we would just have dead fish floating around our boat for weeks?
Yeah, it was
horrible.
April, the beginning of April. We had just gotten a cold snap. So we filmed so much in this waterway that we are a little bit behind, but we're coming up to real time.
We didn't actually film much of our trip along the Gulf Coast because we decided that we were going to edit it a certain way, like real quick jump edits, and just voila, we're there. But some interesting things happened, of course, while we were on that trip. Didn't get interesting until night fell. So when we got to the Captiva Inlet, we actually touched bottom. And I guess apparently there's a lot of shoaling that happens right there.
The hurricane that came in a year prior shifted a lot of the sands around there. So, yeah, we were trying to fight current getting in and also touching bottom. So we decided, nope, we're just going to drop anchor and wait for the morning.
But once morning came, we had a ingoing tide, so we took that in, and then we ran aground again.
We actually ran aground for the first time. Well, that's the second time.
That was
hard.
It was
run
mud, but it was a hard. Like, we were stuck. We were like, crap. We're gonna have to drop the dinghy. And we, of course, we didn't have the camera out.
No.
And, I was super frustrated. Like, remember?
It was my fault.
But I was I was not being nice.
No,
Put it that
so
way.
we did not film, to say the least. But we were able to wiggle our way off and wiped our brows.
Yeah, and then we tucked our tails in and finally got to our anchorage. Where the video truly started, that night we dropped the dinghy and we took it into... Did we take it into Walmart?
Uh-huh. We did some shopping, and then we also went to Home Depot, hoping that we could
get wood.
Get wood, but it fell through. So, and I'm kind of glad it did. One of the things about going through the Okeechobee Waterway was to challenge ourselves and use just the sails and just our motor. We do have a backup generator, which we've told you guys about in the past, but we really wanted to see if we could get the whole way through just using our sails and the little bit of motor that we needed.
You guys ask a lot about the manual windlass that
You mean the Beauless?
No, that's me. The manual windlass that we have mounted to the deck. I don't use it because it takes forever, and I don't know, I get a workout.
A lot of you guys left comments in this video about my shirt, which, funny enough, I'm wearing right now. It says, "Sailing, the most expensive way to get to places for free." It's a shirt that we created, and if you guys want to pop over into the shop, the link is in the description below, and grab one yourself.
Yeah, it's a pretty true statement.
I think we've gone through 4 bridges total in our career because we left straight from the east coast of Florida to the Bahamas. So every time we would go under a bridge, you still think, oh no. But what is our air draft?
We're like 10 feet lower than all of the bridges.
Yeah, the bridges here are 54 to 55, the fixed bridges.
Yeah. When you say nervous, I wasn't nervous at all. It's cool to look up and see the mast coming under the bridge. It's cool to look at.
It's funny because every time, for all of you guys who've actually watched my best friend's wedding, when they're on the boat, him and her, and they're going underneath the bridge, and she has her chance to tell him how she feels, and the light switches as they go under the bridge. That's what I thought about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean.
Original bridge on his 84th birthday.
Here we go. We were one of the 3 sailboats that we actually saw sailing.
Well, I can see why. I mean, we have the time and we have the patience. For us, it's relaxing. It's just what we do. It's fun. We're in no hurry to go anywhere ever.
No.
Like here in Fort Myers, it was super busy.
Power boats everywhere.
Yeah. Being a sailboat, and they're not used to seeing sailboats, you get the yokels around that shout crap at you and try to give you a hard time.
Somebody did shout to us that we should get a motor or something.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of funny how people act.
This was a really cool bridge to go through. It was our first rower bridge ever that we went in. Under. Through. We didn't have to hail because they had already opened it up. Most of the railroad train bridges in the waterway are left open unless a train is going through it. So it makes it pretty convenient.
It backfills when we...
Yeah, it was fun to drone it too. It was cool droning in the river because it just gives you a different perspective.
It's fun going under these bridges, huh?
It's so weird. This is what, probably our 7th now? I don't know.
We're so used to
Max?
droning out in the open ocean and there's not much around. So this is just cool to see Saoirse in a different way.
In a different perspective against all of the land, the other boats, the huge highway that we're about to go under, full of busy cars. I just thought that perspective was so cool of here we are in our tiny little sailboat, slowly going through, just taking it all in, and then boom, the contrast of the busy highway traffic.
That was our busiest bridge, I would say, that we went under. Most of the other bridges, I think maybe we had 1 or 2 boats. This one we had, we had like 5 or 6.
We had a couple, and I can't say any of them were giving way.
No, yeah, everybody was in a hurry to get somewhere.
But we made it through unscathed, no big deal.
About ready to jibe.
I was actually surprised with how much sailing we did. I was thinking that we were going to have to motor a lot.
Yeah, we sailed most of it. Even the first day we sailed a lot.
Yeah. Beau always shoving food into his face.
Oh, yeah. I am a crane. I put as much in my hand as I can.
Yeah.
And I just smash it into my mouth.
Yes. After spending 2 weeks at sea, the winch on our starboard side was such a pain. We definitely have it on the list of things that we need to get fixed. So this is why I was having such trouble with getting it winched in here.
One thing about the waterway was the weather/wind forecast was never right.
Ever.
We went for it and hoped for the best.
Like we said, I really thought we were going to be using the motor a lot more.
Yeah, so we got pretty lucky. There was one day where we did a lot of motoring.
Yeah, toward the end.
Which we didn't expect to do a lot of motoring that day. We actually expected wind,
right.
So there you go.
But with the little bit of wind that we did have, we were constantly on the sheets because it was always moving around on us, so we just had to be really on top of it because the waterway is not very big. Also, something we didn't mention, I don't think really at all in the video, because of our mast having the issue, we decided that it would probably be best not to raise the mainsail, just to not stress the mast any more than needed be.
Using the head sail, we're putting a forward pressure on the mast, so it would actually help, hopefully alleviate some of that backwards pressure that was happening. I'm happy that we just used the head sail. It's way more manageable using the head sail than having to deal with the mainsail as well. Just because the mainsail shades the head sail, so it was pretty easy just using the head.
Yeah.
But going through this bridge kind of set us up for the other bridges.
Yeah, and I didn't really find it difficult. I found it actually exhilarating that I was able to accomplish being able to keep the sail up and being able to tack or jibe back and forth in order to wait for the bridge to open. I was so worried about it being completely open in order to go through because we had never done this before, and I wanted to make sure that we were following the rules correctly, so we were just kind of jibing back and forth.
So you want to get yelled at?
Yeah, I didn't want to get yelled at from the
bridge,
the sweet person behind the radio.
Yeah, but there was a mega yacht parked at a marina. Even though we're not going fast and it's kind of far away, it's still kind of nerve-wracking when you're heading straight for it.
Everybody out in the marina, we're having dinner at the restaurant outside with all these mega yachts parked out there, and here we are in this tiny sailboat heading straight toward them.
Yeah.
It was pretty hilarious.
I'm sure this isn't the first time people have saw us sailing through and are kind of biting their nails.
Like, what are these people doing?
Yeah, pretty much.
I really enjoyed it. I didn't think anything less that I shouldn't have been sailing through the bridge. We did get several comments about maybe that we shouldn't been sailing through. I mean, I feel like there are a lot of boats out here without motors that have no other way of propulsion.
Why wouldn't you
sail through?
Yeah, so
I don't know. That's why we did.
Right. And we have the electric motor that we can throw on easily, and we can quickly drop sail if need be. Like, I'm not sure how that's any less dangerous or more dangerous than just relying on your motor. Really, you think about it, we have a backup.
Right.
It'd be a lot harder to raise a sail than to drop a sail.
I was confident in how the wind was blowing. If it was blowing crazy, then of course we would have maybe been a little bit more cautious and just dropped the sail and used the motor to go through. But since it was so light and it was consistent wind to get through, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. If it's blowing 30 knots,
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been reckless.
Yeah.
But it was blowing,
Good
what,
job.
maybe 10?
Look at
It was-
if
yeah.
we were lucky.
If we were lucky, we were going 3 knots around this point,
All those people out at that restaurant was
I think is what we had said.
Yeah.
The only thing I was concerned with was on the other side of the bridge, there were some buildings, so I thought maybe we would get a little bit of a blockage
Shading,
or a shading,
yeah.
so I felt like, okay, if that was the issue, then we just pop on the motor. But we didn't, and we just kept breezing through.
Yeah, definitely built our confidence for
Yeah.
the other bridges.
Yeah.
And that bridge tender was super sweet.
She was sweet.
Probably one of the nicer ones.
I mean, they all were actually
Yeah, they were
pretty
all-
dang nice.
There were a couple that were just like meh, whatever.
They weren't nice. I mean, they were
They
not
weren't
not
mean.
nice.
Yeah, they weren't mean. They were just mediocre.
They weren't-
Melancholy.
I think they were just being business and
Yeah.
not chatty like some of the others that we were
Yeah.
enjoying.
That last bridge was a little stressful, but I think we did well.
You crushed that.
Thanks, Lovey.
You nailed that.
Thank you.
So some of you guys might not know, but we sailed from Guatemala to Florida without our electric motor installed because our transmission assembly wasn't working properly. And that was actually another reason that we came to Florida, was to pick up a new reduction assembly. And we got that all installed while we were in Sarasota. So this was also a little test on that system. And with that, I collected data throughout the whole trip. We didn't end up using the motor that much, so I didn't have a lot of data points, but I do have enough to like just get an idea of what the draw is going to be on our system.
I think our system, especially with our tilting solar, it brings a lot of curiosity of how far is our range? How far can we go?
Yeah, and honestly, it's not far. It's not even far enough to really rely on the motor. We don't rely on the motor for anything. It's just literally to get us in and out of anchorages. And that scares a lot of people. For us, we're fine with it. We've been doing it this way for 5 years now.
We don't know any different.
Yeah.
One question that we were getting a lot is, why are we not regenerating power while we are sailing, or can we regenerate power while we're sailing?
We can if we go 7 knots, which
We were not doing in this waterway.
we rarely go 7 knots.
Sorry about this dance, you guys. You know, we've got to show most of the things.
You don't like my butt dance?
I would have to say we were probably not prepared for the lock systems.
Yeah, not fully. I mean, it was our first go around.
Is our very first lock.
I'm the type of person who just kind of goes for things. Brandy's very much a researcher.
Yes.
I shoot myself in the foot a lot because of my jump in and figure it out mental, but
It makes life a lot more interesting, though, you
exactly.
guys.
What's the point? You got to make it interesting.
But the lockmaster was very nice. He explained what we needed to do. I had already watched a couple of videos of other people going through the locks, so I had an idea of what we were doing. We decided that I would be on the bow and Beau would be in the stern.
I think we did it pretty well. There was just one little misconception on my part. We ended up sitting there waiting because he said we were second in the queue, which for me, that meant we were going to be the second people to go through the lock.
Did you think only one boat went in at a time?
I thought one boat went
Yeah.
in at a time.
Yeah.
So I screwed that up royally.
I was pretty sure that the first boat was supposed to go in, and then we were supposed to go in following him.
My brain did not pick that up. I completely screwed up on that one.
At one point, he was like, "Are you guys coming in?"
All right. Got our
It was a little
instructions.
tiny boat in the lock, and he's like, "Oh, I thought you guys weren't gonna come to the party." But actually, the guy in the little boat, he was really nice.
Yeah, he was pretty informative. He told us a lot about it. I really like this sailing lifestyle, and even though this wasn't a typical route that we would have purposely chosen, I'm super glad we did it because it gave us so much more experience with our sailing, with navigating tiny, narrow riverway, and also the bridges, hailing bridges, and the locks.
Sailing tight quarters and sailing rivers and stuff is way harder than sailing oceans.
Way different.
I mean, ocean sailing is so easy. You just worry about shipping containers and weather. Being so close to everything and worrying about depths and commercial vessels, you have to pay way more attention.
Mm-hmm.
It's way more stressful for sure.
I'm glad that you were able to steer us in, and I was happy to take the Belle. I was actually a little bit surprised on how easy the lock was.
Yeah, they were super easy.
I was expecting that the water was going to be rushing in, and I was going to really have to hold on to the bow line and make sure that we weren't flying out of there or getting hit up against the wall itself. So when we first came in, I noticed all of these stickers on the wall, and I'm like, man, we have stickers. We could put stickers up here. And we kept forgetting.
Yeah, we didn't add a single sticker to the wall. A lot of you guys commented about me tying the line off to the cleat. I actually only did that just for a second. I didn't keep it there. That plus we were being raised up. We weren't being dropped.
He had not even closed the doors at this point.
Yeah, it was just so I could manage other things. I know better than to have just left it cleated up. I did that much research at least.
Yeah, a couple people were like, no, don't lock it. And I'm like, no, it was movie magic. Unfortunately, we did not show it, him uncleating it 2 seconds later.
Yeah.
So we did not leave it cleated in. So rest assured, that's the little boat that gave us all the information about the lake.
All right, we're through the lock. First one. We had a little bit of.
And of course, since the challenge of the crossing was to sail as much as possible, which really it's always
One hell of a
the mission,
right there.
the sails went back up.
I was thinking. So all I
This
can
little
think of-
boat was so cool, but there was actually nothing in it.
What was that show?
No, there
It
were
was-
chairs and tables.
It wasn't
and
like
stuff.
people were using it though.
Yeah, it
Oh,
looked
really?
Pretty abandoned.
They do, like,
It
gameplay
seemed
on
in
them?
decent condition.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked
That's what I was
super
thinking the whole
old.
time.
Yeah.
I'm like,
It
yeah,
was
probably,
cool to
when
see
you're
stuff
dining
like
or
that.
something.
Those were the things that we were
Just
seeing
looking at
on the river that you're not going to see in the ocean.
It's like motorcycles of the ocean or river.
When you guys see me cooking, I never really have a plan. I just find what's around and throw it together.
Beau is the master thrower togetherer.
Sometimes. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I fail miserably.
Sometimes it's definitely a fail.
But we like to make our own dressings as we need them. Just because we don't have to store dressing. All you need is egg and oil. Those things we don't refrigerate our eggs, so nothing needs refrigeration. Because our refrigerator is not very big.
It's pretty tiny.
It's smaller than a college dorm fridge.
So for the Caesar salad dressing, it's just the olive oil and egg, which goes into a mayonnaise, and then you mix in anchovy paste, garlic, parm cheese.
No garlic.
No garlic?
No garlic.
Parm cheese and lemon juice.
Dijon, no lemon. Brandy clearly does not make the
Nope.
dressing.
But it's just so easy and fresh and tastes delicious.
Yeah, it's really good.
I just love that we have our house with us at all times, that we can just keep on sailing and create a meal while we're sailing, while we're moving from one place to the other. It just still blows my mind to this day. When we were in the car, we would have to like drive and stop at a fast food joint and pick something up and keep traveling.
I guess you feel more secluded on the boat because we're always surrounded by water.
Yeah.
Things are less accessible. It's almost like you're in your own little bubble.
Yeah.
You know, you're floating around on a bubble.
I mean, technically we are. We were always hand steering. We'd never used the autopilot at all during the sail because it was just so shallow on each side of the bank that we decided just to forego not using it. Just when we would think that we were about to lose wind, it would always pick back up, but it was constantly being shaded by the area around us. And Beau has some weird sayings here and there. And he just said to me, "It looks like we have dirty wind."
So what I meant by that, inconsistent wind, it's hitting other things before it gets to us. It's not clean.
I never heard of that saying before, and while I was editing this episode, I actually went to the old Google and typed it in, and the urbandictionary.com came back with a very different description than...
Go look it up. It's pretty funny. But basically it means a fart. So,
a long one.
Dirty wind is a long fart. And that's actually about the wind we were getting. It was fart wind. We hailed a lot of bridges going down this waterway. One thing that people told us in the beginning when we got Saoirse and named her Saoirse, that we were going to have a lot of issues because of the way Saoirse spelled. And basically we really haven't noticed that being an issue. This is the only one where the tender wanted us to spell Saoirse.
I thought it was actually going to be more. I thought more of the tenders were going to ask us how to spell her name.
Yeah, and when I hailed each bridge and lock, I told them the name of our vessel. It's kind of surprising that this was the only one.
Yeah. When we first chose her name, we sent out the name printed to our family and friends and asked them to send a recording back to us on how to pronounce her name. And only one person out of all of them got it right. And if you guys want to check that video out, it's our very first video that we released. It's pretty funny.
But regardless, this guy was super nice.
Yeah. Again, here we are being able to sail through it. We had great wind going through. I love the perspective of our sail in this blue bridge.
It reminds me of like a field goal.
Yeah. Score!
I wish I could have flown the drones while we were going through these, but maybe I could have. I didn't know if I was going to get yelled at by the tenders.
Right.
You know, having a drone up and stuff.
And we actually did read that we weren't able to fly the drones over the locks. So at that point, I think is when you stopped filming over the bridges as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rules and regulations that we did not know about and we'll talk about even more in the future, but one of them was flying drones over those sort of airspaces of the locks specifically.
Something interesting about this bridge that we just passed, the one prior to this actual bridge was destroyed by a barge carrying rocket parts for the Kennedy Space Center.
To make the trip a little more interesting, when we would go through the locks or the bridges, I would look up the different facts and history on each of them, and I found that that was a pretty little cool snippet of history on this certain bridge.
this boat coming up had its mast down, which we were going to do the same thing. So we were checking out how they blocked it up. And if you notice, you can see they didn't actually put a block in the center. So the mast was bending in the middle quite a bit. So we took note of that, and we made sure to build a support for the center.
Yeah, I would want to support it in the center. Denied bridge, denied bridge, denied bridge. This is sailing vessel Sarsha.
So if I ever need a good laugh, I'm going to listen to this over and over again.
Yes, we are eastbound. We're about 0.1 nautical miles away from.
What were you saying?
I think I was saying, I was trying to say how far we were from them, from the bridge.
What I found even more interesting was the operator who, she was like,
What?
okay,
Yeah, she just-
come on up. It's just her response was,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she had no idea what you said either.
I was trying to play it off as though the radio was giving out.
Bridge. We cannot go under sail.
We tried to see if we could sail through it.
Oh, right.
And she told us that we couldn't. So we're a little bummed about it, but I guess with the swing bridge, it's for safety.
And I would assume that if somebody had no other means of propulsion, it would have to happen.
You would think.
But she did mention that we had our big old solar panels, and that was probably acting as a sail.
Which is not the first or 100th time we've heard that.
No. This was such a cool bridge, and she was hands down my favorite bridge operator.
Yeah, she was super
They
sweet.
do act as sails.
We've never had this type of interaction though while we were sailing, because being so close to the bridges and shore,
People just shout out at you.
this wasn't the first one-on-one conversation that we had with somebody as we were just floating through the river.
I don't know if we recorded it, but I had a full conversation with a guy on his dock.
All right, we're through.
Remember that?
Sails go.
I don't think we recorded
I don't
it.
think we
We
did.
didn't have the camera going, but yeah, he
Yeah.
was just chatting away. We do have someone that we did speak with on his dock as well, but there was more than one person.
Yeah, it was multiples
Yeah.
for sure.
We were on a timeline of sorts because we had an appointment to get the mast removed at the marina all the way across the river. We didn't make plans to get off the boat and explore any of these little towns. And to be honest, I didn't even think that there was going to be somewhere to do that.
I don't know. I just didn't really have a desire to do that.
Really? I
Yeah.
thought it would be neat to go into some of the little smaller towns and check it out. Especially, I heard that the place that we were going up to had a cute little area to go in.
The parks, yeah, that would have been cool to check out, but I don't know. I didn't really have a want to check out the towns.
We also sailed most of the day. We anchored right as the sun was setting most days, and we never had a plan on where we were going to actually set anchor.
So we didn't really know where we were going to end up.
We were just trying to take the wind as long as possible.
Because really, we weren't going that far each day. Even though we're sailing all day, we did not go far. I think our most we went was, 20 miles in a day?
Yeah, and that was across the
Yeah.
lake. There's a puppy.
It was just chilling.
We saw so many dogs hanging outside of the back of their houses.
Which is surprising
Yeah.
because there's gators.
Yeah, we saw tiny little dogs on their docks,
Yeah.
which I would be very apprehensive of having a small dog. We were looking on Navionics to find a place where we were going to anchor. We knew that we weren't going to make the bridge opening. Were we missing a lock or a bridge here?
This was, I think it was a combination of two. It was a bridge, then a lock.
Each day the bridges close at 5? Or the locks.
The locks close at 5, but the last lock goes at 4:30. Here's a guy I was chatting with on his dock. He was super nice and friendly.
We would have totally pulled up and set anchor right there and gone to dinner if he would have invited us.
Yeah, but no invite.
No invite.
Once the sun starts setting, Brandy and I would always look at the map and try to figure out how far we were going to be able to get to before we actually dropped the anchor, because we knew we weren't going to be sailing through this waterway at night.
No, it was hard enough to sail safely during the day.
Yeah, there's no lights.
The markers have no lights on them either.
Finally, it's quiet.
It was so peaceful until we heard
the smokers.
Yeah. If you guys have ever seen Waterworld, you know what we're talking about. And if you haven't, highly recommend. It's a cult classic.
It's pretty painful to get through, but some people love it.
Hey, I grew up on that. I love
So
that
did
movie.
Every time we see someone on a jet ski, we yell out, "Smokers!" Because in the scene in the movie, the smokers are the bad guys.
Yeah.
They are coming to steal stuff.
And in this case, they were bad guys because they were kids. Because they were kind of annoying.
But they were having fun. It wasn't bad at all.
Gotta do the fish shake.
The fish shake. And then he joined the party.
Yeah, why not? If you can't beat them, join them, right? So just start dancing. I know you guys are super jealous of my dance moves.
Yes, that's how he lured me in, you guys. His dance moves.
Scared most sane people away, but that tells you something about Brandy.
Hey, now.
Yeah. There's a lot of houses.
So right at this point, we are kind of scoping out where we're going to drop anchor. We use an app on our phone called Navionics. It helps us determine where there's a good anchor spot. We're only seeing anchor spots around the locks in this waterway here. But I'm pretty sure we could probably just drop anywhere.
Every time we're in an anchor spot where we don't see something, you're always like, "Oh, it's okay. We can anchor anywhere."
Well, as long as the depth's right. And
the swing room.
And that there's a decent bottom, then you can, you're in a sailboat. You can anchor anywhere.
It's not very busy at this place.
No, I think we had maybe 1 or 2 boats go by us, and that was kind of early in the night.
Yeah.
And after that, it was dead calm.
So it was a little warmer that day, and I thought maybe the mosquitoes might come out that night, so I put the screens in so we would be prepared.
Thank God you did.
Yeah. I only actually got one in before you decided where we were going to anchor. And even at that, I remember this anchoring. You're pointing at a tree, and you said, "That tree next to that tree."
Yeah, I was just messing with you.
I know.
Seriously, are you talking about that one little tree right there, though?
But this is pretty much how it normally goes anyways.
Well, it does. It's like,
That tree.
I have an idea of where to go,
down
but
there?
to explain that to you is kind of difficult.
More or less, he just holds up his arm and tells me which way to go, and
Yeah.
I just point into it until
Yeah.
he drops the anchor.
Right.
The one.
It was a little bit later, I think, than what we wanted to drop. The sun set pretty quickly on us
I'm
here.
just gonna tell.
I kept changing my mind on where I wanted us to anchor.
Yeah, it kind of went like,
You got
that bird, no. That tree, no. That log, no.
That ripple over there. The ripple over there in the water. Because of that, we didn't get the anchor down until much later. And the mosquitoes came out in full force. And we weren't truly prepared. Like, we didn't have any bug spray or anything. But we were just trying to get anchored and be inside.
We
and
thought
be
we were
done.
going to beat them. And the real problem was, once we are setting up for the anchor and I'm behind the helm, Beau's at the anchor, it's not like we had time to run inside and grab the bug spray. So
Yeah, getting the anchor set and proper was way more important than a couple bug bites. They really came out in full force when I was dropping anchor.
I don't see it. Oh yeah, the bugs are.
We kind of had to just deal with it, and
Oh, mosquitoes.
that is when the dance comes about.
Towards that, hon.
If you dance, they can't get you. But I set down the camera because I couldn't film anymore, and I didn't realize I left it on and recording. But you can literally see the mosquitoes flying around me.
Right now.
It was insane. They were humongous.
Yeah, they were pretty big.
We did get pretty lucky for the rest of the sail, though, because it
Cooled down.
Cooled
right?
down?
Yeah.
And since we had been in Florida, we hadn't had warm enough weather for mosquitoes to be out. I didn't really think about it until just that evening. And I really, really was hoping that we were going to beat them in, but unfortunately, that was not the case.
What else do we need to do out here? Anything? We're good? Alright. Holy moly!
Anchor light.
Yep, we can do that inside. Holy moly.
I had a ton of drone footage for this opening scene here, but a lot of it got cut out, unfortunately. So when I stuck my head out, I think I had just made coffee, and I was still in my sleep attire, which is basically underwear.
Somebody mentioned that it looked like you were the groundhog going back for your clothes.
Yeah, pretty much. It was really chilly.
If I remember correctly, a north wind came in, so that's what brought this colder weather in.
Yeah. And the wind kept switching on us because of these different weather patterns. I think this day, the wind was still kind of inconsistent,
Yeah.
right?
Just motor up
It's
the bridge.
funny, all the comments that mention, whoa, this is the most amount of clothes we've ever seen you guys wearing.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah, we don't like the cold. I'd much prefer to be in tropical weather all the time.
However, it was great for the mosquitoes for the rest of the time we were on the waterway because they didn't really show back up. Or
Yep.
maybe we were hiding, but it was still chilly enough to where I feel like they weren't around.
It was a combo of both.
Yeah.
Because we knew better to even be outside.
Yeah. We were just anchored outside of Belle, which is a pretty popular destination for cruisers to stop at. There's a free dock there. We checked on Navionics prior to getting to the area and noticed that in February, someone stated that it was closed, and there was more than one comment. So we decided where we dropped anchor was fine, and since it was so late, we pretty much ate and went straight to bed, so we wouldn't have been able to use the dock anyways, and we were pushed off so early.
We actually passed it, the dock, and it was completely empty. So I'm glad we didn't even waste our time on it.
We'll be
Yeah,
waiting.
we made the right decision.
Yeah, we would have gotten eaten alive
Yeah.
trying to get to that spot.
To our Victron.
La Belle Bridge was one of the half dozen bridges that we actually had to hail to get to open so we can pass.
3 knots.
Most of the bridges were closed between somewhere around 11 and midnight to 6 in the morning. They did have a couple bridges that you could give them a 3 hours notice in order to open, but most of them were closed overnight. And we got really lucky this day because they do close most of them during rush hour between 7 and 9. We didn't even realize that fact until after we filmed these videos or after we went through the waterway. And today, I believe this was a Sunday, so there was no rush hour
Yeah.
to contend with. We motored through because of the wind being swirly.
Yeah.
And we were so close.
We were really close, and we had flow that was helping us push us through. So we're like, let's be lazy.
The waterway is 154 miles long, and one person did comment that since we have a river system that pretty much cuts off the south end of Florida from the north end of Florida, the south end of Florida is an island,
Oh, really?
if you think about it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Also, I'm not really sure what we were thinking, how long it was going to take us to get through. Did we even have an idea? Did we even care?
We didn't care.
We just knew we needed to get to Indiantown by a certain point.
Yeah, but we did read reviews that it takes typically 3 days to get through it if you're going 5 to 6 knots, just because of bridge closures and lock closures and all that.
However, the commenter mentioned that he did it on his jet ski in 2. He went up one day and came back the next day.
I could see that.
So that's definitely possible.
He was probably breaking the speed limit, but hey, you know.
He's smoking.
Yeah, smokers! So we've had quite a few comments about our head sail situation. And I'm kind of hesitant on actually putting in a roller furler. Yeah, would it be easier?
And more convenient?
Yes. But also, it would take away our ability to sail in such light winds. Because our roller furler is probably going to have 120% sail up there. And that's really going to limit what kind of wind we can sail in.
And we wouldn't be able to put up the Mac Daddy.
The Mac Daddy, which is 180%. And we've flown that in some pretty light conditions and have been able to go pretty fast. It is nice to have the different sail plans to put up in those light conditions. We sail most of the time, whether we're going somewhere or bobbing around. So I would much rather be able to have a larger sail in lighter conditions than have the convenience of a roller furler.
And I mean, where are you going to get a workout in?
Exactly.
Saoirse is Beau's gym.
West to southwest.
As you can see, we are pretty minimalistic when it comes to instrumentation on Saoirse. Actually, that little wind instrument is a huge upgrade for us. When we first started, we just had a piece of string that we tied to the shrouds just to get the direction, and then we would just have to guess how strong the wind was.
I actually missed that piece of string because now we have a wind indicator. We've had a wind indicator just after 6 months of sailing. We purchased one. So our first 6 months, we did not have one. But we step out a lot from behind the bimini because we can't see the top of the mast because the bimini's in the way.
Well, Brandy did install some windows, but they crazed up. You can't even see out of them, so they're kind of useless.
I didn't like them because the sun would shine in on us while we were sailing.
That too, yeah.
When we recreate our bimini top, it will not have windows.
2 to 1, just because it's so shallow and
the water traffic really calmed down the closer we got to Lake Okeechobee. We didn't see many boats at all.
No. Mostly we saw were trawlers.
And for the most part, they were good about slowing down and not throwing that much of a wake. Yeah, occasionally you'd have the guy who was in a hurry, but
I think there was 2 that I can think of. And one of them was a huge tug that was power washing itself while it was going down the river.
I think he had it on autopilot or something. Remember when it revved really high?
Yeah.
It was weird. I was relieved in a sense that we didn't have too much traffic to worry about. We didn't see that many sailboats, though.
Did we even have one pass us?
Maybe one.
In the beginning.
Yeah, in the beginning.
But through this part of the waterway, we saw 0.
Yeah, it wasn't until we were anchored in Port Mayaca that we actually saw a few. If you guys look closely, you can see Dyneema lines running to each corner of each panel. And then they all meet back to central points where we actually have 2 different cleats. One for fore and aft. That's what keeps the panels in their position. There is a central pivoting location, but the panel isn't even really secured other than gravity to that. And really the force is applied by those Dyneema lines. This design might be a little too jiggly It's not the technical term, but it's not. I don't think
wobbly.
I don't think it's rigid enough for most sailors out there to be comfortable with it. But we've had zero issues with it.
Beau's favorite saying, "It'll be fine."
It'll be fine. And it's been fine. And it's actually been really nice.
We have a bar that goes between the two when we have stronger winds approaching. We put that up. We put it up underneath sail as well. So we've never had any problems.
That is true. We do lock it down under sail.
We want more solar in the future. Thank goodness they rotate and pivot in order to bring more power in. I feel like going through all of these locks and the bridges and just going through the waterway at all has upped our game on communication even more so.
Yeah, it'd be pretty difficult if we didn't communicate well. We'd probably have some crashes or more nicks on the boat.
We have been talking about getting a headset forever now, and I think that it would have been very helpful to have it because once we're in the locks, it would have been easier to communicate back and forth. But it was much easier in the waterway than it was on the ocean.
Typically, we have to shout at each other just to be able to hear each other.
I think we can enter the Amazing Race now.
Roger.
Yeah, oh yeah?
I think that we would do good on that.
You think we'd win?
I think we could win.
What's the prize money?
I don't know. A new boat.
All right, we need to figure out how to enter. Would you guys watch us if we were on the Amazing Race?
How far up do you want to go? Like right behind?
I feel like by this lock, which was our second lock, we kind of had our game together. I felt a little more comfortable.
Yeah, we cut our teeth on the first one, which it wasn't hard.
Not at all.
Anyways.
I think we built it up in our minds, or at least I did, on how hard it was going to be.
Do you think you would have been comfortable helming and guiding her in on this one?
I remember you asked me, and I thought, okay, well, I already have my plan set up of how I manage the bow. I feel like you helm in tighter quarters better than I do. And I would have probably been asking you directions and such. And you had already gone through the first one, so you knew how the boat moved. So I felt like we probably should just keep our roles.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's not hard. You just go slow, you know?
Yeah.
And I would try to throw it in reverse once we got to our line that we were trying to call out.
Mm-hmm.
That way there wasn't too much for you to manage, because it is a 15,000 pound boat.
By the end of our trip through the waterway, had it a little bit better down on where we were going to end up on the lock.
The second black strip.
You know, we got a general location, and then we would adjust from there, because there's ladder wells and such that would end up where our vendors were.
Right.
So that would be an issue, and then we would just have to adjust.
Let me pull forward.
I think a lot of people were afraid that I was going to fall over or...
Really?
Yeah. Our lifelines are pretty high right there, and I didn't feel like that at all.
Plus you had the push pit. Yeah,
like right here.
Yeah, so your knee's at the push pit there.
Our boat is being pushed up against it. I'm pushing our boat off of it. It's not as though I was trying to pull the boat to it. So I felt comfortable.
And you're not very klutzy either. Like you're very stable. So
I would have to say, out of the two of us,
yeah, I'm way more klutzy. Like
the amount of duct tape that we go through is because of Beau's boo-boos, not my boo-boos.
But also, I am the one who handles all the sharp objects.
Right. Yeah, I feel like at this point we were pretty feeling good with ourselves. It was a larger draw up on this one, and the boat in front of us had their motor on. It's definitely a no-no.
But if you notice, I actually don't have my PFD on, which I didn't even realize because I had my sweatshirt on. It didn't register for me, and you didn't notice.
I didn't notice until I took my jacket off and you didn't have yours on. But you can see the water just coming rushing in. And I want to say that this lock was the only lock that I felt it on the bow.
Yeah, we had to actually pull on the lines to maintain our position.
Going up was a lot more difficult than being lowered down. I thought it was going to be a lot stronger because of what I had read prior to coming into the lock, that you could lose your bow and, make sure you have it tight and you've got a good hold on the line. So I was gripping that line like it was my life and my job. And it was neat to be able to see the water rising after we finished editing it in Fastmo on how much it just flows in.
It's a simple way to raise and lower. I didn't even really give it much thought until we were in it, and just they use the gates to control the flow.
I wonder if a lot of the other locks are like this, but for the Okeechobee Waterway, the canals on each side of Lake Okeechobee are locked because 6,000 years ago, the ocean receded and left Okeechobee in the middle. If the locks weren't there, the water would completely drain out of Lake Okeechobee because it's above sea level.
Alright, we're good.
Electric.
In the 1800s, Florida was almost broke because of the Civil War. They found an opportunity to raise money by actually selling their, at the time, worthless swampland. They were able to sell 4 million acres to a guy named Hamilton Diston.
He paid 25 cents per acre, and apparently that was the largest land purchase by any single person in the history of the world. Give you a reference on 4 million acres, that's larger than the state of Connecticut.
Now that Diston had all this land, he planned on draining it. And the way he did that was by connecting Lake Okeechobee to the Gulf of Mexico. Once he did that, he opened up a lot of rich agricultural land around the lake.
It did cause a lot of problems downstream with flooding. And unfortunately, after all of those folks bought up new land, several hurricanes came through and caused major flooding and damage, and a lot of lives were lost. So they then realized we should probably connect this appropriately between both the east and the west, and they were able to control the levels of the lake much easier.
For sure, there's like nothing around us. No more houses, just nature.
After all the time that we spent in the waterway up to here, we saw 0 gators, and finally we found our first one. From what I was reading, and I don't know if this is just lake statistics or the waterway itself, but there's over 30,000 American alligators in this water. So
That's a lot.
100% I did not want to fall in. I didn't want to go swimming. I wasn't doing any of that. There was so much wildlife on this leg of the journey, and I did not know how to identify any of it. We hope that we got these birds correct. We're definitely not bird watchers.
It's a dang flamingo.
Bird watching by Brandy. I called a spoonbill a flamingo.
Belle the eagle was a crow.
Yeah.
Right?
I named a couple other things wrong as well.
We didn't see a lot of traffic through this way as well, because it seemed like the busier areas were just the metropolitan areas. We did get a boat cruising through here or there, but it wasn't a lot.
Nice warm chai.
I have to say that I actually thought it was going to be an easier sail than it was, even though it was very slow and calm, but the wind being all over the place did make it a little bit more difficult. So one of us had to be behind the helm the whole time. And I tried to do a little bit of editing while we were underway because it was so calm and easy. I feel like I didn't do a lot because we constantly were changing sails.
Yeah, there was a lot of sail management.
Yeah. I feel as though I was a little obsessed with the alligators and trying to find them because we didn't have any dolphins swimming through, so I had to pick the alligators. It's interesting being from Florida and knowing alligators are pretty much in any body of water. I mean, if it's a retention pond, a swimming pool, a lake, there's gonna be alligators in it.
Swimming pools? Really?
Seriously, 100%. 100%. I grew up learning to ski and wakeboard on lakes in Florida. It definitely helps knowing there are alligators in the water because you do not want to fall over. Alligators are not like crocodiles. Alligators do not really want anything to do with us. Now, how do I want to jump in with this guy right here? Nope. But I think people who don't live in an area that have alligators would probably think we were crazy by getting in lakes that had alligators.
Yeah, it's kind of like getting in the ocean with sharks.
True. However, I feel like alligators are much more concentrated in one area.
Yeah, it feels a little more confined.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're from Florida or if you've swam with alligators before, let us know. Where are you swimming with alligators?
Oh, boo. That was cool.
Yeah. He seemed kind of big.
Yeah.
Ish. I can't tell from over here. I'm sure he's really big if you're in the water with him.
Some of you guys might be wondering the depths of the waterway.
At this point, so was Beau.
Since we were sailing it, I was trying to catch the wind the best we could and work the angles and all that. And one time I got a little too close to shore and I bumped bottom. Now that's pretty shallow. That's almost 4 feet. That made me pucker up a little bit. Thankfully, we didn't get stuck.
I remember being inside looking at the depths and looking at how close we were at out the window, but I remember specifically seeing that we were in 10 feet of water. And then, I mean, it probably wasn't a minute later.
It was like immediate,
Yeah.
But then it was gone. So maybe it was just
A branch that fell over?
or a built-up area of some sort. It did sound a little scrapey-ish.
Yeah, it sounded a little crunchy. But safe to say, everything's fine. We did not jump in to check it out.
No.
Because of the alligators.
But I would say on average, the depth was probably about 10 to 13 feet in the center.
Mm-hmm.
There were some skinnier parts, I think 8, 7, 8. We even saw, I think, down to 5.5, a little closer to the banks.
Right. When we had another boat coming at us, I remember seeing 5 feet. We were sharing the path with them. So moral of the story is when you're in the waterway, stay in the middle.
Yeah, especially with larger draft boats.
I remember it being so cold. It's a nice change. Coming from Guatemala, it's hot. It was sweaty. Inside the boat, it warms up pretty well. You can do a little cuddle. We were making a soup, so we were going to be fine. We were, once again, coming toward evening, and we knew that we needed to get to an anchorage spot. So we had already started looking. Even though you have the navionics and you have the information in front of you, until you're in that spot, you just don't know how it feels.
Right. You have to be in the area to really get a sense or a gauge of where you want to try to drop anchor.
And if you're going to feel comfortable in that area.
Yep. With your swing room and depths, all that stuff.
Which, now that we say that, we end up dropping right in the middle of the bridge. However, we knew that we were going to wake up early in order to get to the bridge first thing.
And since we were like right in front of the bridge and the lock, this is a swing bridge for the trains. It was actually closed, but since we were anchored there, we knew there was going to be zero traffic. So we were a little more in the center of the channel when we did end up dropping, but we were fine with it.
We were lit up. We were in the light of the bridge and the light of the building next to us and the light of the marina. We weren't in the middle.
Yeah, we were a little off skirts,
Yeah.
but, you know, a little more in the middle than we were the previous night.
Yeah. this anchoring actually made me less worried than the first one because we were able to put the snubber out and back down on it really well and not have mosquitoes completely eating us alive.
Yeah, the cold weather did help with that, that's for sure.
The lights were really pretty. When we are backing down on our anchor, I always have to keep an eye on where we are in reference to a point on the shore, or at least that's what I try to do. And that way we kind of have an idea if we're dragging the anchor or not.
Yeah, I do the same, and I put my foot on the chain itself because that allows me to feel if we're bouncing or skipping.
I mark every time we set our anchor down, so we know how many anchorages we've been in our entire lifetime of sailing.
It does help in stormy situations too, because we can track our swing as well on Navionics.
So I've actually talked to Beau about having t-shirts made with our swing patterns. I thought that would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Because it's just not what you would expect.
But you didn't hear that from us, so don't steal our idea.
Let's go get some foam. Nighty night.
Nothing better than fresh coffee in the morning. Typically we'll do a cold brew, but this morning we were doing a hot brew coffee.
Our cold brew is pretty much just ground coffee and we steep it overnight. For you guys who have never tried cold brew before or know what cold brew is, from what we understand, when you heat up a coffee bean, it creates the acidity. And when you do a cold brew, since you're not heating up the bean, it allows it to be more smooth. And it's a huge difference. We do heat up our cold brew. We don't drink cold coffee in the morning.
Yeah, we got to melt the butter somehow. But our standard coffee is typically just coffee, butter, and stevia. But if we do have other ingredients like cacao powder, collagen peptides, cinnamon, MCT oil, we'll throw that in. And then we blend it all together and enjoy.
What's the name of it?
Can you look on your phone?
If you can't tell, it is super early in the morning. We were really tired and in a daze.
We had gotten up early to hail the bridge at 7. No one actually mans this bridge. You need to call them by phone because they're not on radio. And there were a lot of comments on Navionics and some other sites that had mentioned it was really difficult to get a hold of this person. So we got really lucky because a tug went through and we just followed them through. So unfortunately, we have no feedback on this bridge, but obviously the tug knew the right person to speak to. Even though I thought this lock looks smaller than the others, come to find out they're mostly 150 feet long and 50 feet wide. They are single chamber locks. That doesn't mean that only one boat can go in at a time. It's just the design. I also was reading that it's probably best not to be the first person in the chamber, especially when you are being raised up, because of the force of the water coming in will most likely move your bow more, which I did find, but I still didn't think it was uncontrollable. I'm not sure how my snowboarding socks made the cut to boat life, but I'm very grateful for times like this when it's a little chilly. I can put them on and my feet stay super warm.
There are 3 locks on the west side of Lake Okeechobee and 2 on the east side. Since the lake is above sea level, if you're going towards the lake, you'll be risen up.
Risen up?
Risen? Risen?
Rose?
Rose?
Lifted?
Lifted, sure, that lifted's a good word. And if you're going away from the lake, you'll be dropped down.
Also, fun fact, when you're in the lock, it's called locking in. Locking through. Erase that because I don't remember what it was. Locking through. It's called locking through.
We are clear.
I'm pretty sure that this guy was sleepy because we did not have really any communication with him, which is fine. We just had some chattier members in other walks. I have to say that this part of our transit was my favorite.
Agreed.
You could not hear any traffic. You couldn't hear anything but the birds and the water.
It was so calm, so peaceful. I never had a sail like that. Even though the weather was chilly, because we were bundled up, it was comfortable.
Yeah, it was overcast, which was added to the ambiance.
Yeah, it kind of added to that calm,
chill morning.
Yeah.
I had no idea that we were actually pretty much in the lake at this point.
It was hard to tell.
Because of all the marshland to our port. There's just a little canal that you take along the dike, which is the Herbert Hoover Dike, which is to our starboard. It's 143 miles around the lake. It encompasses the lake and helps regulate the water levels there.
The water just rushing by the hull.
I know I've said this before, but we see the most spectacular things when we're sailing super slow. Remember when we were in the Windward Passage and we basically weren't going anywhere and we saw that white-tipped oceanic
baby shark.
Yeah, baby shark.
Yes.
That was super cool.
When we were sailing on the south coast of Haiti and we saw those bioluminescent bombs just going off in the water at night. We were going super slow.
We were sailing into Ilavache.
When we were going super slow and you thought it was a log that was floating next to us and it was actually a whale outside of Guadeloupe.
Oh yeah, it was Guadeloupe.
And when we're saying slow, we could physically be walking faster than what we're sailing. But personally, I wouldn't want to be walking in this water.
Can you walk on water? That's pretty impressive.
Are you watching these birds in that water? You could definitely walk in this water.
There are two routes to get across Lake Okeechobee. There's the Cross Lake route, which is the route we took, or the Rim route, which takes you along the whole southern part of the lake, and you pass a couple towns. We passed one town, and then kind of did a diagonal across the lake to get to the east side.
There are other ways to get across the lake. I personally don't recommend a choose your own adventure.
We saw this one unmanaged path and we're like, are we supposed to turn down there?
I do remember thinking, wait, is this the path or is this the path?
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't because it looked pretty sketch.
I'm gonna have to say that sailing the lake was pretty rough.
Once we got past all this marshy area, which was gorgeous and so full of life, the wind really picked up.
Mm-hmm. And right on our nose. And since we were being cautious of using our mainsail, we were only able to manage it with our head sail.
And the motor.
Which we did use pretty much the whole way across.
We were kind of pointing into it in the beginning, and then we had direct headwind, which was unfortunate because we didn't have much battery power.
We did a lot of tacking, and it was very short tacks because there was no space between the channel. We were going a little bit outside of the channel, and we'd come back inside the channel, and just a tad bit out.
I was less cautious or worried because even though it was the channel, it was the lake. We had depth. Way more than in the marshy area. Because in the marshy area, a few feet away from you, birds are standing in the water.
Lake Okeechobee is 730 square miles and can store up to 1.05 trillion gallons of water. From space, you can see Lake Okeechobee, also known as Lake O. I mentioned in this video that it was the second largest lake in the US. Some people came and said, okay, it's the 10th largest, check your facts. I should have been a little more specific. It's the second largest freshwater lake within the contiguous United States.
You guys mentioned in the comments that the fires were more than likely sugarcane burning. So I was correct.
That it was on land?
It was on land, and it was basically crop raising.
It wasn't, in my head, a house on fire. Or a boat on fire.
Is that what you were thinking?
An oil fire in the middle of Lake Okeechobee.
Because they're drilling for oil?
Yes, of course. While we were sailing, I thought, why don't we have our fishing pole out? And then I thought of the episode of The Simpsons where he pulls in the three-eyed fish. I can't say that I would really want to eat anything out of Lake Okeechobee. There's been so much controversy with chemical runoff, a whole hoopla that we won't get into.
I would imagine that most of the fish would taste like mud. You could just see the silt in the water. It was super muddy.
It even felt as though we were sailing in thicker water. Definitely the brownest water we've sailed in. Even browner than Guatemala for sure.
Mm-hmm. We really put the motor to the test going through this lake because we had to do quite a bit of motor sailing. Actually, even just straight up motoring. It was on our nose pretty much the majority of the time.
We were really overpowered and you had to switch out the sail to a smaller sail.
We switched back to the big sail, remember? Because we had to point into the wind for a small section, dead into it. So we were tacking that. And we had the small sail up for that. But then we switched back to the big sail to be able to better motor sail because then we fell off the wind a bit.
It wasn't that we were really in a hurry. The only thing is that we were tracking to get to the lock right at 4:30. So we were doing our best to get there at 4:30 so we didn't have to anchor out on the outside.
We actually called the lock master, let him know we were on our way, and to see if we could, maybe get him to stay a little bit longer. But he actually said, oh, if you're not going to make it by 4:30, then you should just turn around. And Brandy and I were like, hell no.
Not happening. We were already halfway across.
I asked about anchoring right outside of the lock, and he's like, oh, it's really rough. People don't know your story, right? So I'm like, we've been in pretty rough anchorages. I think we can handle a lake.
The north one was coming in again, and it's not protected really in that lake. It would have been a rough night, but it would not have been our roughest night, that's for sure.
I would much rather stick it out one night than have to, we'd have to triple our track because we would have had to go back and then forth.
I remember after we got off the phone with him, you kind of did some calculations.
I figured that we could increase our speed and still have enough battery to motor to our anchorage.
We were planning on anchoring just on the other side of the lock, so we knew as long as we could get there, we would have just enough power to cook and go to sleep.
And I'm kind of bummed we didn't see the Florida skunk ape, or the Okeechobee ogre.
Yep, Lake Okeechobee has its own mythical creature, and I guess it's like 7 or 8 feet tall, and it's supposed to be related to Bigfoot.
And he's supposed to stink, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's his claim of fame, stinking.
So you smell him before you see him.
I guess so. I mean, I'm pretty sure if he lives in Lake Okeechobee, he's gonna smell pretty bad.
Yeah, like Swamp Thing. Remember Swamp Thing?
Swamp Thing.
Yeah, Swamp Thing. back in the
Makes my
day.
heart sing.
Yeah.
I don't. Is that?
Yeah,
That's not how that goes.
It's not. Oh, but there was
Is it Swamp Thing? Is that the song?
There was like a TV show, Swamp Thing, way back in the 80s.
Yeah, but that's not the song. Swamp Thing, you make my heart sing. What's the name of that? That's not it. No, that's Wild Thing. Wild Thing, you make my heart sing. That's
Whatever.
Swamp Thing.
It sounded right.
No big deal.
Anyways.
Yes,
Hopefully.
we didn't see him. We made it right on time. It was exactly 4:25, I think, when we got to this spot.
Yeah, so we had 5 minutes to spare.
We did. And the Lockmaster was one of the best characters that we met the entire waterway.
Super friendly, super chatty.
Yeah.
He told us that the drunks are the worst because they like end up injuring themselves in the locks because they fall off the boats and they get smushed between the boats and the walls and
Like the party people?
yeah, the party people,
Oh.
the drunkards.
Yeah. He was fun. It was a pretty long lock. I feel like this was our longest lock.
The size of it?
No, the
time
it took.
Yeah, I think he just wanted to talk to some people.
yeah.
So he took his time filling it.
He told us a lot about the area, but he told us about this one lady a couple weeks prior had filmed a boa constrictor going across the waterway. Found that very interesting. He was talking about his pet alligator that visits him. He gave us the whole lowdown of how the manatees get locked in and how they're better than the sailors on managing the locks. But I really found that pretty interesting that they do take in consideration the wildlife that has to traverse the waterway as well.
They kind of benefited from man's creation.
To a degree. This is the first lock that we experienced because we were on the east side of the lake now that we were lowering. And I have to say, I prefer the lowering. Did you like lowering or raising?
I'm assuming they're used to it.
It didn't matter either way for me.
I think the bow had more impact than the stern.
My job was easy.
There was a roach on this
Oh,
line.
really? You
Yeah.
didn't say anything?
Yeah, you can see me shaking it off at some point, I think, but I did not want it on our boat. As we left the lock, we saw an alligator to our starboard behind these gates, and I'm pretty sure it was his pet bull gator that he was talking about while we were chatting with him.
Yeah, it was big.
It was humongous. For the first time in the trip, it was so hot. That lake was freezing, but it really goes to show you once you get behind shaded areas and there's no flow of the wind, it just boils.
Made it. We were so happy to get to our anchorage. We were just exhausted from all that tacking and motor sailing. Yeah, it was
A lot of work.
a lot of work. Because we were motoring so much, our batteries were pretty low at this point. It comes with the nature of having an electric motor. You had that battery power to use. It's not that big of a deal. We just gotta wait around and charge them up.
We have backup systems. Like we've mentioned, we have a backup generator. We have means of cooking outside of our induction stove. We don't have to heat up food if we don't want to. We're not in dire straits. It's just we're trying to explain the setup.
All of them,
All of them.
including this one. So we have to charge up.
This anchorage was by far my favorite spot.
It's probably in the top 10.
Yeah, it was really secluded and it was cool having that old school train bridge there.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch when they did come through.
It was nice too because we were just inside the no wake zone. Boats had to go through there slow. We got waked here and there because some people just don't care. But for the most part, it was just so peaceful. We hung out with the gators and
We ended up naming them.
We're anchored in Port Mayaca, which is about 9 miles away from Indiantown. We have a few days until our mast is supposed to get stepped. So we took this time to get some wood, which we got from a local lumber store, and they even delivered it to a boat ramp. So I didn't even need to like rent a truck or anything, and just picked it up right at the boat ramp, dinghied it back to the boat, and took what, a day or two to construct these mast stands in anticipation of dropping the mast at Indiantown.
I think you'll see that Beau pretty much overbuilds this construction. In the moment, we thought we were going to have to travel with the mast. Our plans were to go into Indiantown, get the mast dropped, leave Indiantown, do the work on the boat, go back into Indiantown, and have the crane lift the mast back onto the boat, which ends up not becoming the case. But I wanted them to be nice and sturdy because we were going to be in an anchorage that we would probably get a lot of wake, and I wanted to make sure the mast wasn't coming off the boat. And if we have any 200-pound birds land on the boat in the future, we at least have a stand for them now. Well done.
You're welcome, bird. With these mast stands, I took ideas from good old Google and what people have done in the past and pictures that they've posted, and made up my own way of doing it. Especially the one on the cabin top, but the one up at the bow, I actually took more of a design plan from an actual carpenter, so that one turned out really well. But all in all, they were both way overbuilt.
I think it's better to overbuild if we don't know what we're doing than to underbuild.
People in the comments said, hey, why don't you use that bridge right there to pull your mast?
Okay, the logistics of it. Believe us, we talked about it. The train would come, the bridge would lower, the train would go over it, and then it would raise up.
So yeah, the train operator is the one who raises and lowers the bridge. So he would have seen us over there, even if we were just hanging the block there.
We would have had to put a block and tackle on it.
While it was lowered.
And then
wait for it to raise.
As he's going over it. Because the only time it was lowered is when the train was going over it. So then we would have to wait for it and hope that we could get it all set up. And then the bridge would raise. And hopefully just enough for us to have it taken off. And then we would have to wait for the train to come back and lower it. Yeah.
It was too sketchy.
And there wasn't enough room for another boat to pass through. Can you imagine if a boat was coming through and they were like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing?
Maybe they would have helped us.
Maybe so.
That's good.
The Port Mayaca train bridge here is the lowest clearance in the waterway. It's 49 feet. And if you can clear all the rest of the bridges, there's a thing that they call the Port Macaya limbo. The Port Macaya railroad bridge is the lowest clearance. Mayaca? What did I say?
Macaya.
The Port Mayaca railroad bridge is 49-foot clearance. So if you can clear this bridge, you can clear all the other ones at 55 feet.
If you can list your boat to fit under 49 feet, then you're golden.
So they have this thing called the Port Mayaca limbo. This guy used to do it. I don't think he's here anymore. But he would come out to your boat with barrels or bags of water and list your boat. And then you could go under. But when we were in the anchorage, we actually saw somebody who was doing the limbo underneath the bridge.
Yeah, they didn't use water bags or anything. They just used people.
Two people, I think, were on the boom.
Either the boom or they had a whisker pole out or something.
They were just hanging off, and
it was pretty fun to watch. We didn't have the camera available, so
I also didn't want to point it at them in case they didn't clear it. But it
that would have been golden.
But I think when we passed, if I remember right, they did say that they had done it before.
Yeah.
Anchorage long enough, we were pretty low on our batteries, so it was nice that we were able to fill back up on our batteries, get back into the swing of things. We had actually been there so long that we needed to go to the grocery store. We had to hop in the dinghy and dinghy 9 nautical miles down the river.
Yep, to a park.
There was a notice that we weren't able to lock our dinghy to the boat ramp. We had this genius idea that we should lock it to one of the overhangs that overlook the waterway. Beau dropped me off at the boat ramp and then proceeded to take the dinghy over to the overhang and then locked it off and climbed up and over the overhang to get out of the water.
Then we trekked in 2 miles.
2.5?
2.5 miles, which we walked. It was a nice little change. We needed exercise. We had been cooped up on the boat, but the cold snap was gone and it was hot. So we were starving and we went to a little Mexican restaurant right next to the grocery store.
It was called Solavino.
It kind of reminded me of our Mexican restaurant that we used to go to in Winter Garden.
Yes. Very authentic, very true.
It was so good.
Totally hit the spot. And coming straight out of Guatemala, we really felt like we needed to have some more Spanish yumminess.
Yeah, just to get that memory back.
Yeah.
And it was a good thing we did, because otherwise we would have bought a lot of stuff we didn't need at the grocery store.
Yes, I bet you guys are the same way. Do not go grocery shopping while hungry. We did buy lots of food because we were so low and we knew we were going into the marina, so we were doing kind of a stock up.
So with full belly and a crap load of groceries, we hauled that all back and we jump in the dinghy and start going. Well, I gun it and the boat is not going anywhere, but the motor's revving up really high.
I'm sitting there thinking, we have 9 nautical miles left to go back to the boat. We're slowly drifting off from the boat ramp, and we have 1 oar in our boat.
And it was getting dark because this adventure took pretty much all day.
So I asked him, what do you think it could be?
And I wasn't sure, but I had a little bit of an idea that I didn't want to admit to.
So we would start it up a little bit more, and as long as we went slow, it was fine. But the moment we revved it up, it would just start spinning, and we wouldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So we decided to stop and look at the prop.
Yeah, and it was definitely spun.
And then he says,
It was probably when I pulled the boat from the dock to the lockup spot. I actually hit something. I didn't think it was that big of a deal because I was still able to move. And there's a skeg under the outboard that's supposed to protect the prop from striking anything. Clearly, I hit this rock just right to where the blade hit it and slightly spun the prop.
thank goodness we were able to go at just the right speed. We weren't able to plane. What took 30 minutes to arrive there took us 2 hours to get back. But I'm just grateful that it got back.
Yeah, and we didn't have to row back because that would have taken all night. We would have been actually carried away by mosquitoes.
We did not see one boat pass us from where we left the boat ramp to the boat itself. We saw a couple guys fishing in the river, but that is it. The downfall of being in a very secluded anchorage.
Yeah, you got to be self-sufficient.
Don't be stranded.
Thankfully, we had a spare prop on Saoirse, so I just switched it out the next day and tested it, and it ran fine.
I just found it super funny that you kind of kept looking at me with a straight face saying, I don't know what could have happened.
I didn't really put 2 and 2 together because it was non-eventful. Just didn't register.
When a gust happens, it's kind of like...
Yeah.
If you guys watched the video, you'd know that we weren't able to get into the marina to drop the mast. Then we also got notice from one of our patrons, because we were keeping them up to date on what we were doing, and he let us know that we weren't actually allowed to be anchored where we were anchored. I think the law is 24 hours max, and we had been there quite a long time. So
long enough for us to be naming the animals.
Yeah.
So we had to pack up and leave our favorite little anchorage, and there was no anchorages really between where we were at and Stewart outside of the marina. So we knew we were heading straight to Stewart, which is the end of the waterway.
As we were cruising down the river, Brandy and I were just brainstorming on how we could get the mast dropped. We could have gone to another marina and done it that way, but I actually did some research and found a means of constructing our own way of taking down the mast. And I might have convinced Brandy, maybe not 100%, that that's the way we were going to do it.
So while we were on the riverway, I was speaking to him about possibly other different ways. Oh, look, there's a possible place that we could have the mast removed. Oh, look, that looks like a cherry picker over there.
But,
oh, look, that tree looks really good.
But I was pretty set on constructing something and doing it ourselves because it seemed like a fun challenge.
You're going to have to stay tuned to see the crazy idea that Beau came up with.
For those of you guys who've been following us, you know that we worked on the mast in the past. We replaced the compression post and the foot underneath the compression post that ties it into the keel. That was a concern back then. Well, now we have a new problem of the actual deck between the compression post and the mast itself.
This is our very last lock that we went through. A couple people were asking if the locks cost anything. They were free. I don't know if other areas in the world you have to pay to use locks or...
Yeah, Panama, you gotta pay.
Oh, that's right. Very true.
Yeah.
I think just using the waterway, period. But the whole entire waterway is free, so we didn't pay a dime. When we approached this lock, we were actually planning on anchoring before going through the lock and then just picking up the next morning and going through.
But there was a little John boat, and I guess they were in a hurry to get where they were going, so they were going through anyways, so we just tagged along.
I really did kind of feel bad, but I thought, I mean, what's an extra boat in the lock?
He's got to lower it anyways.
The dockmaster comes up, throws us the ropes, which is different because it's the first time we've actually had the ropes handed to us. And he says, which I didn't include in the video, how fast are you guys looking to get out of here?
We were in no hurry. So we were like,
take your time.
Yeah, whatever.
I was under the impression that he was going to lock us in for longer because he had some paperwork to do.
Who knows? Yeah, I thought the same thing. But then he says, all right, this is going to be the fastest lock you ever been in. And it's actually the largest drop. I think it was, 12 feet? 12-foot drop? So when he handed us the lines, we're like, oh, boy.
This is a long line. Yeah. It's going to be a big drop. And the John boat in front of us had a couple kids and 2 adults. And I'm thinking, oh, man, these poor guys. This is going to be a wild ride for them. But it was okay. It actually, I felt, was way smoother going down than coming up. It didn't bother me any.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. It was kind of fun.
As we were leaving, we were waiting for the John boat to go in front of us because we didn't want to cut them off, but their engine stalled, so we had already started to push off.
Yeah, I couldn't have just stopped and waited for them. That's why I was just like, we gotta go.
Yeah, we thought we were all going. I asked them if they needed us to throw them a line and tow them out, but they said that they were okay. Just as we exited the lock, I heard somebody say, you guys got to get out of here.
Oh, maybe the lockmaster
I think so.
was trying to kick them out. Yeah, because they could not get their motor started.
Eventually, pretty much as we were dropping anchor,
Yeah,
they did come out.
It took them a good 5-10 minutes
Yeah.
to get that thing going.
And we literally hit a sharp left and just dropped anchor right there.
20.8 nautical miles.
So crunching the numbers for this specific day, we did have about a 10 to a 15 knot headwind, and we did a little bit of sailing, but a lot of motoring. Going 3 knots, we could travel a little over 40 nautical miles, which is not bad with such a strong headwind.
But we're probably gonna
Our battery bank is not that large and our range is not that high, so we never factor in motoring for our plan.
You know how it goes.
We understand that there is no comparison between diesel and electric. We know the limitations of Saoirse as an electric boat, and we may not have the range or the power, but if we were ever stuck in the middle of the ocean, we're never gonna run out of fuel as long as the sun's still shining.
So in like a zombie apocalypse or something, we'd be set. We'd just go out to the middle of the ocean and putz around.
This is our little escape pod. But in all seriousness, as electric boat owners, we just want to share our experience with those who want to learn more about it.
Know what I'm saying?
So now that we are through the waterway, would you ever do it again?
100% yes.
I would have to say no.
Really?
Only because we've already done it. I would prefer maybe to take the route around Florida just so it was something different.
But you said, would I ever do it again? I would definitely do it again.
I would do it again. As long as we could anchor in Port Macaya again.
Mayaca.
Mayaca.
Brandy's been saying Macaya, and it's Port Mayaca. I could be screwing it up too. Who knows? You know how we are with pronunciations.
But it was a unique experience, and it was definitely outside of what I thought it was going to be. And I had a really good time sailing through with you, and it was just the peace and calm that we needed before the craziness that is about to happen.
Yeah, all the boat work we've got to get done.
Spider webs on our back, on our topping lift. Little turd.
So we were heading towards Stewart, and we had several anchorages to pick from, but it's always nice to know a little bit more about them before you set anchor. And we got lucky because we know that our friends Billy and Sierra are from the area. So I reached out to her and asked if they had ever anchored in any of these spots. And she mentioned Penderas Cove, where we ended up going into. And I know that Billy mentioned they had done work on their boat while they were in there.
Wasn't it rigging work?
Yes. So we thought, okay, if we do have to do mast work in here, this may be the best spot.
And pulling in, we noticed that there wasn't too much traffic. So we were thinking that it was going to be a good spot.
It actually did turn out to be a very good anchorage. So if you're ever in the area, we highly recommend it. Across the way, we could dinghy over and lock up our dinghy and go to the grocery store. There was a laundromat in walking distance. We also were able to walk to a rental car. We were able to rent a car to go visit family. And we felt safe with the boat being there.
Yeah, there's other liveaboards around, so it seems like there's a little bit of a community there.
We also had friends that came into the area, so we were able to leave Saoirse behind for a day, and they were able to keep an eye on it for us.
When we were going in there, I do remember our depth sounder freaking out on us. It was showing like 150 feet deep, which we knew was way off, but I think because it was so silty in there that it was throwing off the transducer.
No longer in the waterway, I don't think.
Beau shouted out to one of the guys that were out on their boat to kind of get an idea, because we had no idea what the depths were. At one point, we got so close to a boat that looked like it was probably sitting on the bottom because it was a little listed. So we turned back around to find another spot.
Yeah, and then we ended up anchoring kind of closer to these two huge boats. So I assume that they had some pretty large drafts and that we were in a good spot. That's a wrap.
We really appreciate you guys listening to us speak about the behind the scenes of our crossing from Fort Myers all the way to Stewart and all the stuff in between.
Hopefully you got a kick out of some of the insights and the things that we didn't show. We can't capture everything. There's a certain vibe that we want to put out there. We want to show you like the relaxing side of sailing. It can be difficult at times, but it's also very peaceful as well.
This is one of the highlights of being able to have a commentary behind the scenes on all of these videos because we can really convey the true feelings behind them.
We appreciate you guys watching.
And if you haven't subscribed quite yet, be sure to do so. And we look forward to doing another in the future.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.